Hello, everyone. This is Marty Wuttke with another edition of our series on the pillars of health. And today is a little talk short on exercise. But before I move into that, I just want to review a few things from the first two pillars. And if you remember, the first pillar was on sleep and the importance of sleep. And I just want to reiterate and underline a few points in regard to that. So, everything depends on sleep in terms of our physical health, mental health, emotional health. Um, Sleep has to be sufficient, and it also has to encompass the cycles that we call stage one, two, three, and four of the sleep cycle. So, if you remember, the most important part of the night for you, for us, is the first 3 or 4 hours of sleep. So it needs to be uninterrupted. And that's when we go into a deeper stage of sleep, which is where our hormones are um, modified and some certain hormones released, and where the repair and rejuvenation of the body occurs. So if you have sleep issues and you wake up and you don't feel rested and something's wrong, I really, really want to encourage you again, something that I mentioned in that first talk about getting some kind of device, wearable device, they're called, that monitors the sleep cycle. And they have improved quite a bit. The algorithms have improved, even though, they're not directly measuring the brain waves, which is how you measure a sleep cycle. They do combine different components that give fairly accurate um, description of the stages of sleep as we go through them and so on. They don't work for everybody. I think I don't know exactly what the individual differences are, but one in particular is the Oura ring, OURA ring. And this one has a pretty good track record, as well as a Fitbit watch called Versa 3. Those two really seem to be acceptable in regards to measuring the sleep cycle. Now, if you really have a major sleep issue, then of course, um, what we do here at our clinic is we send people for a sleep study, and that's where you go and they put electrodes all over your head and you try to go into to sleep. Um, and what the sleep studies are usually used for are things like sleep apnea and excessive snoring. Sleep apnea is certainly a dangerous issue and will have profound effects on your whole body, particularly your cardiovascular system. So if you suspect that you have sleep apnea, and that's when when your throat literally closes up and you can't breathe, and you wake up gasping for air, I really encourage you to get that checked out. That's extremely important and can really mess up the sleep cycle. The other thing we mentioned in the first talk is how important it is to have that last meal a couple of hours at minimum before you go to bed, so your body's not busy digesting the food. Also, uh, I have to point this out. Alcohol 3 to 4 hours before bed is not a good idea. Alcohol really interrupts the sleep cycle, and um, it can throw, especially if you have a drink every night, it can really throw the whole cycle off and prematurely age you, essentially, is what it does. Obvious things like caffeine, nicotine, any stimulant you want to avoid before sleep. And uh, second to alcohol in terms of a problem is sugar. So you want to be sure you're not eating sugar. Okay. So that's all I want to add to the sleep issue. But the second pillar was nutrition, and we touched upon a lot of points there. Um, But I want to underline something that I didn't speak too much about, and that is this new discovery of the importance of the microbiome. The microbiome is the gut and large intestine, small intestine, stomach, esophagus, even the mouth. There is a huge population of bacteria, fungus, mushroom, etc. In fact, 90% of the cells in our bodies are not us. 90%. And so those cells make up the microbiome. And they're extremely important for regulating everything from immunity to digestion to neurotransmitter levels and so on. This new discovery of the microbiome and how important it is really revolutionizing um, medicine to a degree, because we can measure it and figure out what you might be lacking in and what you need. In other words, all probiotics are not created equal. You may have a very specific deficiency or a specific problem with the balance of your microbiome, and that needs to be addressed. The main point, though, about the microbiome is feeding the good bacteria and not feeding the bad bacteria. So first is not feeding the bad bacteria, and that's very simple. We avoid sugar and refined carbohydrates, because that is the nourishment, that is the food for the bad bacteria in the gut. The good bacteria needs things like fiber, inulin, which is inulin is contained in foods like artichokes, um, mushrooms, and inulin is very important because that's what's known as a prebiotic. So this feeds the good bacteria in the gut and helps to squash the nutrition uh, that the bad bacteria requires. So paying attention to that microbiome is extremely important. And you can get it tested. There's a company called Viome, Viome. I think I mentioned it before. And Viome will take some samples, blood and stool samples, uh, by mail, and give you a whole profile of what your microbiome is up to. So if you have any gut problems, digestion problems, irritable bowel syndrome, anything that I encourage you to take a look at this and pay attention to what you're eating. And if you can, eliminate the foods I mentioned and the substances I mentioned, and then add some of the other things. Artichokes, you can get anywhere. They're not expensive and they're good. They're a good addition to a meal. They add that prebiotic component. So finally, today's talk is on exercise. And this is another topic that is individualized. So I'm just going to touch on some of the major points. Again, I'll come back to this in a later talk as well. But the importance of exercise can't be understated, not just for the body, but for the brain. Brain needs the, the bodily movement in order to activate certain pathways in the brain. In fact, in neurodevelopmental circles, circles where we look at how brain and body develops from infancy on, we say something interesting. We don't learn to move; we move to learn. So, in other words, the movements that we go through as we, go through the stages of crawling, creeping, walking, and so on, are really what you're seeing there is the brain learning how to connect with different parts of itself. It's extremely important. And this is important throughout our lives. If you don't use it, you lose it. We really need to keep activating our body in order to keep those brain pathways stable and exercised. And if for instance, if they've been done experiments with college students where they have them lay still in a box-like container for a couple of days, and you can see deterioration begin to occur. So movement is extremely important no matter what age we are. Now, you don't have to go out and, be an aerobic person or, lift weights, but what's important is to find the exercise or the movement that most appeals to our personality. Weight bearing exercise is extremely important, and that's things like weightlifting or even body weight exercises, because that's what keeps the bones strong. That's what keeps the the skeletal structure uh, intact. The other thing that's really important about exercise, and I should say movement too, is this part of our physiology called the lymphatic system. Most people know what that is. Lymphatic system is sort of like the body's cleansing system, like the sewage system. And the lymphatic system, unlike the cardiovascular system, does not have an organ that keeps things moving, the heart. The lymphatic system requires a couple of things: breath, deep, especially diaphragmatic breathing. That's what starts to move the lymphatics, and movement. So movement is extremely important for keeping those lymphatic systems moving. Um, so there are, popular um, movement exercises out now that I recommend to all of our clients, and that includes yoga, hatha yoga, the postures, the stretching, the movement. It, my personal opinion is that yoga should be gentle and shouldn't be aerobic. There's power yoga, this sort of thing, but I'm not so sure that's the greatest thing for the body. So yoga that is quiet, controlled, and incorporates breath is very powerful, very beneficial. We send even some of our kids, our client children who have attention issues, behavioral issues. We often recommend a good child yoga class to them. The other two are Tai Chi. Tai Chi is excellent for, again, creating that brain body connection and reinforcing that. There's many, many, many different forms of Tai Chi, many different teachers, but you can usually find a good Tai Chi class close by. When you go to China, it's interesting. I visited China and toured there before, and you drive down the street through past the parks, and I don't think there was ever a time of the day when I didn't see 10, 20, 30 people, either individually or in a group, doing Tai Chi. And it is a wonderful exercise and technique, almost like moving meditation. The other, of course, is an offshoot of Tai Chi, or sister, I should say, and that's called Qigong. And Qigong is not quite as popular, but Qigong also incorporates uh, uh, breath awareness, physical movement, and sometimes even internal processes like visualization and so on. So Qigong can be very beneficial. Again, like Tai Chi, there are many different systems and styles, but I really encourage if you're inclined towards that, to check it out. So one of those, hatha yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong are good. And there's popularized Pilates. Pilates is also good for the stretching and keeping the joints loose. Um, so the exercise recommendations have varied quite a bit over time, everything from 20 minutes a week to 120 minutes a week. And again, I think that's purely individual and personalized. The one problem I do see with some of our patients is over-exercising. Over-exercising in some cases is worse than under-exercising. And the main part of over-exercising is not giving the body enough time to rest, recuperate, and rebuild itself. So as you look at your exercise regime, it's important to make sure you have those rest days and you get deep sleep so your body can repair, and that you provide the appropriate nutrition so that your body has the building blocks to repair. any kind of tissue stress. So I could get into an hour of the benefits of exercise. I think most people are well aware that exercise is an important component of our health, and that getting on a regular scheduled exercise program is extremely important if we want to live to our highest function. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you learned something, and always remember, and some of you have been doing this, that if you have questions, just email us or let me know, and I will, in follow-up sessions, try to answer those questions. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, a wonderful month, and I'll see you next time.